The Villisca Axe Murder House in Iowa is a kind of attraction that speaks for itself, if I'm being frank. It doesn't need any advertisements or loads of billboards to bring in the visitors. The name of the place says it all, and the gruesome legends surrounding the house are the only advertisements needed. The publicity comes naturally, mostly from true crime and ghost enthusiasts. In the very early morning hours of June 11th, 1912, sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., 8 people were bludgeoned to death with an axe inside of the home of the Moore family. Including all 6 family members and 2 friends of one of the daughters, 6 of the victims were children. The night of June 10th, mere hours before the killings, the family had gone to church, which ended at 9:30 p.m. and arrived back at the house at around 9:45 or 10. Cigarette butts in the attic led investigators to believe that the killer snuck into the attic while the family was out and hid there until they fell asleep. Like most people in Villisca at the time, the Moore family didn't lock the doors to their house when they went to church. The parents Josiah and Sarah Moore were the first victims. The killer only used the blade of the weapon on Josiah, who received the most brutal beating. The rest of the victims were murdered with the blunt end of the axe, which had belonged to Josiah. The family friends were staying in the guest room. Ina Mae Stillinger, age 8, and Lena Gertrude Stillinger, age 12, were the last to be killed. All the victims except Lena appeared to have been asleep when they have died. Lena was the only one who appeared to have defensive wounds and was lying across the bed. The axe was left in the guest room next to a 4-pound piece slab of bacon. At some point, the killer had covered all of the mirrors in the house with blankets and clothes and cooked himself a plate of food which was left untouched in the kitchen. He also left behind a bowl of bloody water. There's something so hauntingly intriguing about little details like this in unsolved murders. The gruesome killings were discovered the next morning when Mary Peckham, the Moore's neighbor, noticed that the family hadn't started their morning chores at around 7 a.m. She called Russ Moore, Josiah's brother, who let himself in with a copy of the house key. After discovering the bodies of the Stillingers, he called the local peace officer who called in investigators. There were plenty of suspects, but the murder was never solved, and one suspect, Reverend George Kelly, was actually tried for the murders. Kelly was a traveling minister who was in the town the night of the crime. He was at the service the Moore family attended before their deaths, but inexplicably left town between 5 and 5:30 a.m. the next morning. He showed a suspicious interest in the murders, though after being in and out of trouble with the law for sending obscene material through the mail and a stint in a mental health hospital, he was arrested for the murders in 1917. He confessed, then recanted, and was eventually tried and acquitted. It seems that most people don't believe that he was mentally or physically capable of the murders. Naturally, a house with such a dark mystery and such a dark past quickly attract rumors of a haunting and ghost stories. The house was lived in for years after the murder, although families never stayed for long. From what I can tell, there's not really a ghostly phenomenon that hasn't been reported at the house. Disembodied footsteps, things moving, voices, apparitions, shadows, bad vibes, and you name it. The Villisca Axe Murder House hasn't. It's been on basically every ghost hunting TV show, from Ghost Adventures, Scariest Places on Earth, and all the essential spooky podcasts including Lore and My Favorite Murder. I became aware of the home in 2014 after a man staying there in an overnight ghost hunt inexplicably stabbed himself. An event that made national news. I love both a good unsolved crime and a bone-chilling ghost story, so I went on a recent road trip there through Iowa, and I decided to make a stop at the house for a bit of investigating of my own. The town of Villisca is small, but it's a welcome oasis of civilization and an unending ocean of farmland. The Villisca axe murder house is right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and its quaint and cozy exterior is a stark contrast to the legend that surrounds it. The house itself is kept in pristine condition, so the sales booth, gift shop, and the bathroom are in the old barn on the other side of the tiny but tidy backyard. On my way out of the barn to the house itself, I noticed a cork behind with some photos pinned on it. Upon closer inspection, I realized that the pictures were evidence of paranormal spookiness going on. There were lots of nighttime pictures with ghostly orbs and even a snapshot of someone whose back had been scratched, supposedly by an unseen entity. I wasn't the only one visiting the axe murder house that afternoon. There was a group of 3 women in their 20s winding down their tour when I opened the door to the house, which appeared to give them and the tour guide, also a younger woman, and a bit of a scare. I walked around the house while the women finished their conversation with the guide. It's not that big of a place, and it's hard to imagine that there were 8 people sleeping there that night, let alone that a murderer was able to hide and be undetected. The place was furnished with a creepy mix of period antiques and modern kids' toys, which, well, anachronistic, definitely left me unsettling, and it really just made me uncomfortable. Particularly haunting was the attic space where the murderer allegedly hid while he waited for the family to fall asleep. It was oppressively hot, and the feeling I had while up there can only be described as, well, dark. The other group left as the guide, and a Villisca Iowa local started to tell me the story of the murder and of how the house came to be a tourist destination. The house was slated to be torn down, but a local woman named Martha Lynn decided that it was an important piece of town history that was worth saving. After she bought the house in 1994, she quickly realized that there was a ton of organic interest in opening it for tours and overnight ghost hunts. She did some work to take out the plumbing and restore the appearance of the house to as it looked back in 1912, and then added period-appropriate decor, and it's been well worth the effort. Other than the regular daylight hour tours, you can also book overnight stay in the house. Those will set you back just over $400 and have proved very popular with ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. The guide said that as a local, she knew that most people in town didn't buy into the ghost stories and that the kids like to tap on the windows when overnights are going on. I didn't come here looking for proof of the paranormal, just a good ghost story, but I was still curious. My last question to the guide is if she'd ever personally experienced anything weird, and her answer was a resounding yes. From things moving to the sound of the footsteps down the stairs while she was on the second level, she had a few experiences of her own. As proof, she pointed towards a toy car sitting on the old stove above me. A bit earlier, she said it had been lying on the other side of the stove, upside down. I can't be too sure if it was her, mind you, or a ghost playing tricks on her, but either way, I definitely got what I came here for.